Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so we've been reading the Ānāpānasati Sutta. This is Sutta number 118 in the middle-length discourses. And this is the Sutta on mindfulness of breathing. Okay, and so far in the sequence on mindfulness of breathing, we've covered what I call the basic step, or the foundation, which is in paragraph 17. That is, having sat down, crossed the legs, set the body erect, and set up mindfulness in front of him. Ever mindful, he breathes in, mindful, he breathes out. So that is really, you could say, the foundation or basis for the whole practice of mindfulness of breathing. I just wanted to say something. I don't think I spoke last week about this expression, establish mindfulness in front of him, which in Pali, it's parimukkhang satting upatapetva. And the key word here is parimukkhang. So the word mukkhang by itself can mean the face or the mouth, more specifically the mouth. And the prefix pari gives the sense of around. So when you take parimukkhang together, literally it would have the sense of around the face or around the mouth. And so this becomes the basis in the commentaries for the statement that when you set up or practice mindfulness of breathing, you set up the mindfulness around the nostrils or on the upper lip, just above the mouth. Years ago I had investigated this expression, and I found that it seems to be used in a sense that seems to be used sometimes in such a way that it should not be taken too literally. So it could be taken simply as setting up mindfulness without indicating a specific place. But because if it's taken literally, it indicates around the mouth, therefore the commentators say that when you practice mindfulness and breathing, the attention should be fixed around the nostrils, the upper lip, wherever one feels the impact of the breath coming in or going out. But I know teachers who teach mindfulness of breathing without focusing the breath, but without focusing mindfulness on the breath in that specific place. Even I remember hearing a recording of Ajahn Brahmavangso, who's a great advocate of mindfulness of breathing, and he said to follow the breath wherever one could feel most distinctly and clearly the motion of the body that's connected with breathing in and breathing out. And so though I used to take the expression quite literally, now I take a sort of broader interpretation. I don't know about Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh. Does he ever specify a particular place to observe the breath? No, he just says, be aware of the breath. Does he give choices of here? He doesn't mention any place, just be aware of the breathing. So my advice to people who are practicing, of course, if you're practicing under a teacher who says, focus on the breath in this area, then you should follow their instructions. But if you're practicing on your own, you can experiment and see where you feel this impression of the breath coming in and out most distinctly. As I think I mentioned last week, there are times when I have this heaviness in the head and I don't want to focus on the breathing there. So where I observe the impact of the breath is on the buttocks, where when you breathe in, there's an increase in the pressure because sort of there's an expansion of the body, and so the buttocks are pressing more forcefully upon the cushion. Then when one breathes out, there's a sort of light lifting of that pressure. And so one could be following the breath in quite minute detail just through the pressure sensation on the buttock. Now, if this gets on YouTube, there's going to be a revolution. A whole generation is going to grow up practicing mindfulness and breathing on the buttocks. Okay, so we have the basic practice of mindfulness of breathing indicated by that one phrase, ever mindful one breathes in, mindful one breathes out. Then comes a set of 4 phases in which one observes whether the breath is long, whether it's short. Then comes the controversial phrase, experiencing the whole body, Sabbakaya Patisambhedi, which I explained last week. There are 2 interpretations of that, either as literally getting the sense of the whole body as one is breathing in, breathing out, or sort of the more established interpretation of the commentaries. It means that as you breathe in, you become aware of the entire in-breath from its inception through the drawing in of the breath to the very end of the in-breath. And as you breathe out, you become aware of the entire out-breath from its beginning through the whole extent of the out-breath to the end, but always keeping the attention in the place where the post of observation, not following the breath from the nostrils down the windpipe into the lungs, down to the bottom of the lungs, and then from the bottom of the lungs up and out. Okay, and then lastly comes breathing in, tranquilizing the bodily formation. And then, as we explained last time, the bodily formation is explained in some sutras to be the process of in and out breathing. So this, in effect, means breathing in and out, tranquilizing the body. Tranquilizing the breath. But on a wider interpretation, one might take the bodily formation to be the sense of everything connected with the breath going on in the body. But as the breath becomes more tranquil, all the other kind of micro-activities, molecular activities associated with the breath, the nervous activities, muscular activities, even molecular activities will become more tranquil. Okay, so now we come to the new section. So here we have the text says, he trains thus, I shall breathe in, experiencing rapture. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, experiencing rapture. Then let's take the next pair. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, experiencing pleasure. He trains thus, I I shall breathe out experiencing pleasure. Now the two key words in these two steps of mindfulness of breathing are Piti Pati Samvedi and Sukha Pati Samvedi. And now, if you're familiar with the formula for the first jhana, you know that what's emphasized in the formula for the first jhana is precisely these two qualities of Piti and Sukha. For example, if you look at the formula for the first jhana, let's see. For example, on page 275, paragraph 19, it speaks about how the meditator abandons the five hindrances and enters and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. So what is being indicated in these two steps or phases of mindfulness of breathing is the arising of these two sort of powerful emotive or felt qualities, which will eventually, when developed to a certain sufficient degree of strength, will become the dominant factors in the first jhana. Is the recording okay?
The recording is okay. It's a low hum noise.
Coming from the device?
Not sure, maybe the frequency.
Okay, now there's a difference between piti or rapture and sukha, in that piti, in terms of a technical classification, piti or rapture is assigned, of the scheme of the five aggregates. Piti or rapture is assigned to the aggregate of mental formations or volitional formations. So it's not actually a feeling, though it seems to be very closely associated with feelings, particularly with sukha. And so the word piti, it has various nuances, different translations, sometimes joy, elation, upliftment, exhilaration. Even in its stronger degree, we might render it as ecstasy. I can use that word without seeing flashing colors and and piti, rapture, is a somewhat coarser quality than sukha. Sukha, or pleasure, belongs to the five aggregate. It belongs to the aggregate of feelings. So pleasure is one of the feelings of the three types: pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neutral feeling. So sukha is the pleasant feeling. And whenever rapture arises, it's always accompanied by pleasant feeling. And so it's a bit difficult to distinguish the two. in order to distinguish the two, one has to be able to inspect the state of mind and see what is piti, what is this rapture, this uplifting, exhilarating quality, and what is the pleasure. Hard to define pleasure, but it's simply a pleasant feeling. And the distinction becomes, it's rather obscure in the early stages, because when piti arises, it's like, let's say, two girls come to a ball or a dance, and one is wearing a bright pink and red dress, like the color of this, is that like a pocketbook? Pocketbook in front of me. So one girl is coming in a pink, white, red dress, with frills and ruffles, fluffles. And the other girl who's alongside her is wearing a sort of a light gray dress. So when the two girls come into see who's come in, and of course the attention is going to focus on the girl in the bright pink and red dress, right? Even though the girl in the gray dress might be prettier, but it just seems to be the natural circuitry of the male nervous system to be attracted to something which is bright and flashy rather than something which is dull and subdued. So when this piti comes up, even though it's accompanied by sukha, but one doesn't notice the sukha so clearly because the mind is getting sort of overwhelmed by the impression of this joy, delight, elation. But as the dance goes on, or as one gets accustomed to the sight of the two girls who have come into the dance hall and starts looking at them, one could see that maybe the girl in the subdued gray dress is prettier than the girl in the bright pink and red dress. You're thinking, that's a bad monk. What kind of examples does he think of? Okay, so in a similar way, once one sort of gets accustomed to these two qualities present in the mind, then one starts to see that sukha is actually more pleasant, it's subtler, more refined, and more, naturally, it's more pleasure, is more pleasant than joy or rapture. And so with continued practice, one can distinguish the difference between piti, rapture, and sukha, pleasure. And in fact, as the practice continues, even though you see in the earlier stages, disturbances, the obstacles, the hindrances start to subside, then they come up together. The experience of rapture and pleasure. But as one continues with the practice, then the rapture becomes more refined, it sort of settles down. And so then the pleasure becomes more prominent, and then one can distinguish the pleasure. Now, what seems to me to be interesting, the way the practice is formulated in the sutta, we have to remember that this is still mindfulness of breathing, and so the attention, at least in my understanding, should still be focused upon the in and out breath. It doesn't say that one becomes aware or focuses on rapture, or focuses on pleasure, but it says, what I shall breathe in experiencing rapture, I shall breathe out experiencing rapture, I shall breathe in experiencing pleasure, I shall breathe out experiencing pleasure. And so it continues to, I think the focus point of the training is to continue to be mindful of the breath. That is the sense that he trains thus. One is continuing to be mindful of the breath. But as the piti arises, then one knows one is experiencing piti, or rapture. As the pleasure arises, one knows one is experiencing the pleasure. But one still keeps the focus on the breath.